There? Am I audible right now, everybody? Students, am I audible right now, everybody? Yes, I am audible. So as we set the frame and if we can have all the black parts of the presentation removed, I hope that now my audio is clear, my video is clear, and what I'm writing on the screen, we need to, yes. And what I'm writing on the screen is visible to all of you. If it is, give me a quick thumbs up, everyone. Give me a quick thumbs up in the chat to let me know that we are good to go. Yes? Okay, all right. Thank you. So good evening and welcome to all the students who are here as a part of today's class. Once again, as in the beginning, there were some audio issues. Welcome to Byju's 6th, 7th and 8th grade channel. I'm your teacher Aishwarya, and in this particular class, we are going to be covering the chapter what, where, how and when. So I hope that all of you here have your notebooks and pens ready with you, because it's going to be a very simple chapter, right? Very easy, simple chapter where we are going to start and understand why is it that we need to study about certain things. Yes? So very quickly, everybody, all of you here, all my students right now are in grade 6. And in 6th standard is when, see, till 5th standard you learn about, social sciences in general, right? But when you come to 6th standard, suddenly you have 3 textbooks. Yes, you have 3 textbooks which are there, out of which one is history, one is geography, and the other one is going to be political science. And most of often than not, we'll be like, ma'am, history. Very boring, right? Very, very boring chapter thing to study about. Why should we study history? And how many of you really find history very boring? You can be very honest with me right now in the live chat, right? How many of you find it to be very boring? See, there are students like Crazy Cacti. Okay, can we also increase the font size of the comments? Thank you. Yes. So some of you here, see, if you find it boring, it's okay. Because I do understand that there are students who do find it boring, but there are students who also find it very interesting. Because see, let me give you a simple analogy. Whenever you go on summer vacations and you go out and maybe you go out on a trip, or you go out on a vacation trip, maybe you visited Kashmir, beautiful place. You come back and what will your friends tell you? Friends will be like, hey, how was your trip? Did you enjoy Kashmir? What happened in Kashmir? What did you do? And then you will sit and narrate your whole story. Now, the trip is not happening right in front of them, but rather they are listening to the story that you are telling about the trip. So pretty much when Ankita ma'am told you about her Egypt trip, you were not physically present with Ankita ma'am seeing, different places in Egypt. But you were able to, recall what happened at that time. It did not happen in the present, but it happened in the past. And you love listening to stories, right? We always love telling stories. We love listening to stories. And history is pretty much a subject which is all about stories. It's as simple as that. It's just a subject wherein there's a lot of stories, there's a lot of facts, a lot of events that have happened, and a lot of important dates as well. And today we will understand why should you as students study about this. So what are our learning objectives for today? Our learning objectives of what we are going to study in today's class is going to be the concept of the past. We will be studying about the different periods that were there in history. Then we will also talk about what the earliest civilizations were. Then we will talk about how we got all this information. How is it that we understood that all these things happened way back in the past? And of course, we will learn about the important various versions of the past and some of the important dates, and why should we study about these dates. So these are things that we are going to be studying, and in the next half an hour, 40 minutes, we will wind this up because this is as simple and easy. So everybody, we are all going to study the story that happened, right? And we learn about what happened way back in the past. So whenever you ask any story to your friends, so let's go back. Ankita ma'am going to Egypt, right? So Ankita ma'am had visited Egypt. So first, what will we ask her? So if Ankita ma'am says, hey, I went on a trip, you will ask what? Or you would ask her, what did you do when you were on vacation? Then what will you ask? Then you will say, where did you go? Then you will ask her, who did you go with? And then you can ask, why did you go there? Why did you choose Egypt as a place? Then you will ask, when did you go? And then you will also be like, how was the trip? So these are some questions we will all ask, right? We all always ask whenever our friends tell us that, they've gone somewhere or they tell us a story. So these things are questions that you would ask. Yes? Very simple and easy. Now this right here is what we call as the 5W1H framework. Yes? So this is called as the 5W1H framework. That means 5 W's. That is what, where, why, who, when, and then how as well. So we are going to use this particular framework today in order to study and learn more about why we should study history, what is there in the past that is so important, when did all these things happen, right? So we are going to use this kind of a format today. Now before I proceed with learning more about this, let me just address the live chat right now. Dimsy, definitely I will prepare you for Olympiads, but not right now. Yes, and of course for students who are saying I'm not looking at the live chat, I am, but I don't want to get distracted in between. So first listen to what I'm teaching and then we will go ahead with it. Yes? Okay. Ma'am, if I do the work of archaeology but not professionally, is it said to be archaeology? See, if you are not professionally doing it and if you have not studied archaeology professionally, it might be little tough because whether the accuracy of it is there or no would be an issue, right? And there is no mentee today. Yes, no mentee. We are just going to be discussing the chapter in general. So in our class today, we are going to apply this 5W1H concept, right? So we're going to start talking about what does our past tell us? What is there in our past and why should we learn about this? Why should I study about the past? It happened then. How is this relevant to me? Why should I be studying about it? Then, when did the civilization, okay, now that I know that there's a reason why I should be studying this, what happened, right? What is it? When did the civilizations begin? What were they like? And then you'll also learn about where will I find this information about the past? And who is going to help me study about my past? And how these dates, unnecessary dates, why should I remember? My birthday date is very important to me, but why should I learn about these dates that happened way back in them? What is the reason behind having all of these dates? And the more and more you go in higher grades, you will keep telling, ma'am, so much to remember, I cannot remember this, right? So these are some of the questions that we are going to be tackling, all right? So let's start with the first question. What does our past tell us? Now I have a question for all the students in the live chat, and students watching this video much later can also answer this question to me. And I have a question for you. What did you do your last birthday? Okay? In the previous year, maybe you would have had your birthday this year in 2023, or maybe you would have had your birthday maybe probably last year because your birthday is maybe after May. So what did you do last birthday? Did you celebrate it? Did you not celebrate it? Did you go on a trip? Maybe did you visit your grandparents? You can let me know in the live chat. What is it that you did in your last birthday? So a lot of you here in the live chat, yes Ranjana, we will be doing it, you don't worry. Yes. So what did you do last birthday? So now here I can see some of you are telling me, ma'am, I have celebrated my birthday very well. All right. Some of you have gone to the beach. Some of you went on a trip. Some of you went to the water park. Some of you went to the mall. Some of you have done nothing. Okay. Not a problem. Last birthday, I was sleeping. That's what I did last birthday. Now I have another question for all of you. What did all of you do? And what did you do on your birthday? Maybe 5 years back. How many of you would remember what you did 5 years ago? Not many of us, right? If you ask me what I did 5 years ago on my birthday, it will be very tough for me to remember. See, what I did yesterday, what I did day before yesterday, I will be able to remember. But 5 years before, if I have to ask you, you will be like, "Arey ma'am, I may or may not be able to remember." Now, I have another question. How many of you have spoken, sometimes, when you listen to stories from your grandparents or even your parents. But here I'm going to specify on this. When your grandparents talk about what they did. So whenever you celebrate your birthday, your grandparents would have told you, back in my day, we actually did not celebrate birthdays. Or when we used to have our birthdays, we never had cake or anything and we did not have all these sparkles at home. Their parents would have probably made them some kheer or paisam and they would have, gone to the temple. So a lot of of you here would have, you would have heard your grandparents talk about all of this, right? And similarly, in a lot of ways, today when we study with, our phones or laptops, or, when we have to go to school, we have a school bus, we have a school van, we have uniforms, and then we go, right? But at the same time, if you ask your grandparents all of these things, they will say that we never have, or even if you ask your parents, they have never studied using their smartphones. They did not study using laptop. Of course, some of them would have cycled to school, some of them would have walked to school. So a lot of you they would have all had very different stories way back then when compared to us now, right? Life back then. So that is what I am coming to. The life that was there way back, probably 10, 15 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago, right? Life was very different. And that's why studying the past is important, because we not just understand about how our life is right now, but you get to know that we are able to live the kind of life that we have today because of the life that was there before, like how our grandparents have lived across to, all these years. So you see that the way they dressed, the kind of food that they ate, the kind of professions they had back then, along with that livelihood, the way they lived their life was very different, right? Most of them used to, if you talk to your parents also, you would see that they used to have like an ancestral home. They used to live in joint families, big, so many aunts and uncles, everybody used to live together. But right now we live in nuclear families. We are all, in different parts of the country. So many things have happened over time. So learning about our past actually not only tells us about all of these things, but also tells us about lifestyle, what kind of lifestyle they had, what was the culture. See, we follow a lot of traditions at home, right? So we follow many traditions. For example, in the morning, normally we see our mother doing puja, or maybe our grandmother doing puja, or there might be small things during Diwali, or maybe during Christmas, or maybe during Eid. We see that during all of these religious festivals also, there are many things that our family does, right? So all these traditions are passed down from generation after generation. But sometimes when we think about, okay, why are we doing it, and we ask our parents or when we ask our elders, they will be telling us a reason. And that is because of certain events that have happened way back in the past. So tradition, religion, culture, all of these things, they tell us, right? The history, the past tells us about all of these things. Yes? So past tells us about what they did exactly, and also what they ate, the clothes, the profession. Very good. So now, of course, we understand that this is what our past tells us, and you've got the answer, right? Now we know. What does our past tell us? We know it. But why is it important? You tell me. Why should we study about our past? Arey ma'am, back in their day, they did something. They lived that kind of a life. Okay. But how is that relevant to me? Today, I am living a very comfortable life. I have so many things around me. But why should I study about what they did? Can any of you tell me in the live chat? Yes? So, Pramila, I'm taking class 6 history. Very good, Sakshi Dubey, very good. Exactly. If you need to understand why we are living the life we are living today, then it is simply because of the past, right? So studying about the past is not just listening to story and telling, okay, they did something way back, or some king did something, or some emperor came and invaded the country, some emperor invaded this country. How is it relevant to me? No. So a lot of you here would understand that studying the past actually tells us a lot about the present, right? And you would see that a lot of things, a lot of changes that happened within the country, not just ours, any country, whatever changes that have taken place is due to the events that have happened in the past. So if you think about it, there are various changes. But what are these changes that have taken place? Can you guess? What changes would have taken place from the past to the present? Can any of you guess what changes would have happened over a period of time? Any of you can take a guess. Yes? Any of you who want to take a guess as to what are the changes that we see in the present that have come, or changes from the past that have made it to the present? Yes? We could learn about the mistakes. Okay, very good. Clothes, house, lifestyle. Okay. Education, development of cities, technology, buildings. Very, very good. So compare. See, this is a beautiful representation of how things have changed over time. So if you think about it, earlier in the days, if you want food right now, what will you do? Your mother will give you food, or in case if there's no food at all, probably we will order the food and there'll be a delivery person who will come and give us the food. But way back in those days, people would actually go hunting. They will have to walk maybe for miles and miles in order to find food. Now we don't go and hunt for food, right? We just need to order, buy our groceries. Everything has become easy. But next, if you think about it, after eating our food, we also know that adults go to work, you go to school, right? We do all of these things. But way back in those days, you see that they would practice, just to make sure that their hunting skills are good. They would practice archery, right? And they used to make sure that they sharpen their tools. And that's how they used to they used to, spend their time. They never had to go to office or school at that point, right? And similarly, if you think about it, you know that they used to cook their food or they used to collect their meat. But right now, we have a more of a social kind of lifestyle. So this is what I mean when I say that when we have grown over time, things have changed, right? Yes, they are hunting and gathering, exactly, which is what I am going to come to the next point. So there have been considerable lifestyle changes that have taken place over a period of time. So now next question is, when did all of this happen, right? So if you are telling me, ma'am, back in the past people were doing something and all, and now it's very different from what we're doing today, when did it actually start happening? When did lifestyle start changing? When did the earliest civilization begin? What were they like? Because now we can't go back in time, we can't time travel and see what they were like. But all we can do is learn more about them, right? So let's understand more about when did the earliest civilizations begin. Now for this, you should know what is civilization. So how many students here in the live chat know what is a civilization? Can you tell me very quickly? Yes? Very good, Pramila. Very good. That is also one very important pointer. Exactly. So Pramila says that we will not repeat the mistakes if we know the history of the past, right? Yes, Prerna, it is. Gajala, you can ask your doubt. Yes? Okay. So Sakshi Dubey says Indus Valley civilization. Okay, very good. All right. Okay. Yes, very good, very good. So exactly, no? So in this particular case, if you think about it, we see that the earliest civilization that was there. So when we say civilization, we see that it is a group of people, right? So let me just write this down again. It is a group of people who live together, right? So we see that it is a group of people who live together harmoniously in cities or in social groups. So what do we mean by a civilization? Basically, a civilization or a group of civilized people is when they live together harmoniously, right? And we see that they are found in cities or in social groups. Now we see that the earlier civilizations that were there, they normally decided to settle, right? That means they decided to stick to one place in and around rivers. So I would specify this in and around rivers. Now can any of you tell me why they decided to settle in and around rivers? What would be the reason behind it? Yes? What is it, or what is the reason behind settling in and around rivers? What could the possible reason be? It's very simple, right? Because they wanted or they needed to drink water. Exactly, right? So water was available and water is needed for a lot of functions, right? Which is why we saw that they normally settled in and around the rivers. Now here we saw that the people who settled, right, in the earlier civilizations, they were all said to be skilled gatherers. Now what do we mean by skilled gatherers? It's very easy. So because wherever they were, they had to gather food. We saw that they had to, gather fruits. They had to gather roots, whatever was edible. And along with that, we also saw that they had to hunt down animals as well for food. So some of the earlier people who settled down, that means decided to sit in one place or live in one place, we saw that they were said to be hunter-gatherers. And along with that, what did they do? They gathered wild animals, they made sure they collected fruits, and they collected berries also. Yes, and we saw that they had a good knowledge, right? Vast knowledge about the kind of area that they lived in. And along with that, right, we see that in this particular case, we observed that they prefer to settle in and around rivers because, like Suhani tells me, in and around rivers, they saw that the soil was very fertile. So eventually, over a period of time, they did not have to go and collect all of these things. They could grow it themselves. Yes? So when they had to grow it themselves, around maybe 8,000 years ago, people slowly started to grow crops and they decided to settle near river banks, right? So we see that some of the earlier civilizations started off like this. Now, before I go ahead with giving certain specific examples, let me address some comments which are coming in the live chat. First and foremost, there is a very similar topic in 8th standard. Does not mean that this is a 8th standard topic. This is a 6th standard topic. So for Ranjana, who's been asking me this is from 6th grade itself. You have a very similar book. You have a very similar topic. Now, I have referred to NCERT as well. If your textbook is not aligned, is not NCERT, may or may not be that this chapter is not there, but this chapter is relevant to understand why you need to study history, right? So you can go online, search for the NCERT textbook, you will find this. Kalai Chelvan, I have already told you what is civilization. I shall repeat once again. Civilization is nothing but a group of people who live harmoniously. That means they live in collective agreement. They are living peacefully in cities or in social groups. So that is what we mean by civilization, right? So now let's have a look at this particular map of India, right? So this is a map of India and we're going to look at where earliest civilization began, right? So here again, first agriculture, yes, between 8,000 to 10,000 BC, we can say that, yes? So now, of course, when you look at it here, right? So in this particular case, if you look at it, we see that river Narmada is right here, right? It flows across a few states. Now, if you talk about river Narmada, or if you talk about, the Indus river that is here, or the Ganga river, and we also see here that there are various hills like the Garo hills, we have the Sulaiman and Kirtar hills, and the Vindhyas. We see that in and around these areas of our country and a little outside our country, we see that some of the earliest civilizations were there. Now, first and foremost, let's talk about the rivers that are there, right? We'll talk about river Narmada. Now, if you think about it, before people decided to settle down, right? Before people decided that, okay, I will live in one place. So today, wherever you are living in a home, right? All of you are living in your homes, and whatever you do, you come back to your home. Yes, you don't decide that today I will live in Bangalore, tomorrow I will live in Mumbai, day after tomorrow I will go to Delhi. No. If your home is Bangalore, you live in Bangalore. If your home is in Delhi, you live in Delhi. You probably might wander around a little bit here and there. Maybe go to school, maybe you go for classes, right? And you come back home, and that's pretty much it. But the thing is, way back then, if you look at people, no, they would actually move homes. They'll go from one place to another and they will settle down in different parts. And we would call these people as nomads. How many of you have heard this word nomads before? How many of you have heard the word nomads before? You can say a yes or a no in the live chat. Yes. So who are nomads? Nomads are people who are constantly moving around. They will never, settle down in one place, right? They will constantly keep going from one place to another. But the thing what happened eventually is that over time, these nomads realized that, hey, I could just settle down in and around these rivers because we see that the lands are fertile. So which is why we saw that in the initial days, right, people decided to settle down in and around the river Narmada. But of course, over time, especially in and around the regions of the Sulaiman, Kirtar Hills region, which is now situated out in the Pakistan region, that is where people actually started to practice agriculture also. And they saw that the initial few crops that they grew, right? So now they started growing food of their own. The initial crops that they grew were wheat and barley. And we also saw that they decided to domesticate. That means they decided to have cattle like sheep, they had, goats and many other things. And similarly, even in the ranges of the Vindhyas, right? So Vindhya hills and in the Garo hills region, we also saw that, they started to cultivate rice and they started to grow their own food. So basically, if you think about it, in and around the Narmada river, initially people were settling down. That means they were building their houses. But initial traces of where agriculture started to happen was in the Sulaiman Kirtar Hills region. And eventually, right, we see that even in the Garo region and Vindhyas region, there were traces that were there. Now moving on to some prominent rivers like river Indus and river Ganga. We saw that some of the earliest civilizations were seen in and around the Indus regions, probably 4,000 years ago almost, right? And similarly, in and around maybe 2,000 years ago, you would have found a lot of civilizations that existed around the Ganga river as well. And we saw that many kingdoms were set up, the rulers were very powerful, right? And we saw that people were coming in and out of the countries as well. They were crossing borders, visiting. So lot of things were happening in these regions, right? So some of the first cities, exactly, right? So some of the first cities were set up in and around here. So we saw that because of setting up these cities, there was a lot of traveling that was happening, right? So we saw that there was a lot of travel which happened to different parts of the world or different countries, yes? So if you think about it, now people were moving around, they decided to settle, they built kingdoms, and now they are going to move and explore. So now brings us to a question. Why? Right? Why is it that people traveled? Why is traveling so important? See, when you go to school and you come back, you are actually traveling to your school. Or if you go to your grandmother's house or your elder's house or your relative's house, you are traveling. And you take a car or you take a bus or however it may be, you take a train. But you never think about why am I traveling there? Or even if you think about it, probably just to visit, right? There is nothing beyond that you might think about. Yes or no? How many of you agree with this? How many of you think about why am I traveling to school? You just go to school and you come back. You're like, I have to go to school. So I'm going to school and now I'm going to come back. Yes? Exactly. So now if you think about it, back in those days, right? Back in those days, there were many reasons as to why people would travel off to far regions. Now when I'm asking you, you will tell me, ma'am, I am going to school to get education and all that. But every day when you go to school, will you tell yourself every day, I am going to school to get education? No, you will just go to school and you will come back, right? But here, if you think about it, back in those days, there were many purposes as to why people traveled. And because back then, people were not traveling that much. So there was a very big significance. Because earlier, like I told you, now everybody has just settled down in their own places. Now slowly they were coming out and they were moving around and they would come back to where they are settled, or maybe they'll go settle in some other place. So during all of this, normally they traveled because there could be some war or conflict between people or between countries. Sometimes people will not be happy with where they are, or they want to explore more and want to get new livelihoods. Yes, now they wanted to spread their business. So if I was a farmer and I wanted more people to buy my crops, I have to go to different paths. Then if I want to learn, and at that point there was a lot of preaching that was happening. So to preach about religions, to preach about culture, people would travel to different paths so that more people would be there. Yes, and to discover new places. Can we call this migration? You can, in a sense. So if they decided to move and settle down to different paths, you can say they migrated. Shubh, I will take your answer towards the end. So once I finish, I will take the answer. Okay? So for civilization get stopping and why it is no longer there, I will take that particular question towards the end. Yes? So now if you think about it, there are multiple reasons as to why they traveled. And eventually, right, as people went to different paths and they met different people, there was a lot of sharing of ideas. See, right now, I am able to share my ideas and you are able to share your ideas with me because of what reason? Simply because we are now connected to each other through a platform like YouTube. But back in those days, they didn't have YouTube, they didn't have phone, and they did not have newspapers, they did not have internet. So how would they, talk about, how would they communicate their ideas? Only when they traveled and met physically. Which is why in this particular case, we saw that traveling, We see that traveling to different parts actually help them in sharing ideas. And in due course of time, eventually as more and more travel happened, we also saw that people decided to settle there only. So you imagine I lived here. I went to another place which is called B. Now I like the place B because there are more mountains than where I live in. It is a cool temperature. I like this place. So why should I go back to where I came from? I will decide to settle in land B itself. So now even though I am not born and brought up in B or this particular land, I like this place, so I have decided to settle here. It's as simple as how I am not born in Bangalore. I came to Bangalore at a very young age. But I liked Bangalore. My family liked Bangalore. So we decided to, settle in Bangalore. And over time, I grew up, I'm working, everything is happening here in Bangalore. Which is why, if you think about it, there is diversity that comes here, right? There is diversity in the people. In every city you go to, whether you are from Mumbai, whether you are from Bangalore, you will, in Bangalore you will not only find Kannadigas. Or if you go to Chennai, you will not only find Tamilians. Or if you go to Mumbai, you will not find only Maharashtrians. You will find a blend of people. Why are you finding a blend of people? Why is it that in your class also, you will not find only one person, all of them being from the same place. You will find people coming from different places. This means that there is different kind of people are there. And this variety, or this is what we call as diversity, right? So that is something that you need to understand, which has come because of all that travel that took place. So eventually all this blending and everything led to our country being called one in two things, which is either India or Bharat, right? That's how we call our country. So let's understand how the name came into the picture. Now, before I go ahead with this, a lot of comments coming in. Ma'am, please teach in Hindi or English. I understand that you might be very new to my class. So, for students who are very new and who want to know about what is my primary mode of teaching, I teach in English because A, I'm not comfortable with Hindi, and B, you need to be a little more comfortable in English, which is why I will help you out with it. Okay? So, coming back as to how the name came, that is India or Bharat. Now, see, one thing is, commonly, India came because of the river Indus. Now we discussed, there was this beautiful river Indus that was there along the sides of which some of the earliest civilizations were there. Yes, and this Indus river is also called as Sindhu river in Sanskrit. Now we had, many countries trying to invade our country, like the Iranians and the Greek, they all tried to invade. And what they saw, maybe probably 2000 years ago. So what they did was that they were familiar with this particular river, which was the Indus. And they call it the Indus river, right? Or Indus river, yes? So they also called it as the Indus river. So they saw that because they were coming from this direction, the land that was to the east of the river, they called it India, right? So that is how this came into the picture. Then of course the name Bharat. How did our country get the name Bharat, right? We always say Bharat Mata. So why is it that we got the name Bharat to our country? The word Bharat was used by people who lived in the northwestern part of the country, and of course it was mentioned in the Rig Veda as well. So they told the term Bharat, or they gave the country's name as Bharat. And of course this was way back 3000 years ago, but eventually that was what was used for our country, right? Hindustan came much later. Yes, that came much later. But eventually in the initial days, for a long period of time, we called it India or Bharat, right? So that is how the name for the land came into the picture. Now, before I go ahead, I have some quick questions for all of you. So the first question is, we can find out many things about the past, what people ate, the kind of clothes they wore, the houses they lived in. We can also find out about the lives of earliest hunters, herders, farmers, rulers, merchants, priests, craftspeople, artists, musicians, all of them. What else can we find out about the past? Games the children played, the stories they heard, the songs they sang, or was it all of the above? What else? What else can we learn about it? So it's a poll question. You can let me know the answer in the chat section. For those of you watching this video later, you will definitely be able to give me the answer. This is very simple and easy. Exactly. Correct answer here is D, which is all of the above. Now moving on to another very simple question. Why did people travel from one place to another? What is the reason for the travel? Escaping war or natural disasters, searching for new livelihood, spreading their business, or is this also all of the above? You have 4 options from which you need to give me the correct answer. Yes? Very good. The correct answer here is all of the above. So now we know what happened or what is there in our past, why we should learn about what was there in our past. Then we saw that where did all the civilizations come, where were the earliest civilizations there. And of course, we spoke about how the name Bharat or India came into the picture. Now, you can ask me a very important question. Ma'am, where did you get all this information from? You can ask me that question outright. Where are we getting all of this information from? If it is there in the past, there should be some record, some information. It should not be that I made up my own story about the past. It's kind of like, imagine if I told you, today I came in the morning and I saw this huge cow. This cow was the size of a 3-story building. Now if I tell you, right, if I tell you that I saw a cow which was in the size of a 3-story building, how many of you will believe me? You will be like, ma'am, you show me photo first. That you really saw a cow which was of the size of a 3-story building. Such a big cow you saw means even I want to see how big this cow is, right? So I am sure that all of you will not immediately believe me, right? You will ask me, ma'am, what is the source? Exactly. So where is the source of our past? So if you are telling me today that people traveled, people settled near the rivers, people used to hunt food, they used to gather, they used to come and, they used to gather food. Where is all the source coming from, right? Where is this information coming from? Where can we read about our past? It is there in manuscripts and inscriptions. Now, I want all of you to take 1 minute and observe a manuscript and observe an inscription. If you don't know what it is, it's okay. But what I want you to do is I want you to have a look. And I want you to tell me what you see as a difference. Because students in 6th standard right now, you are all very young, okay? So you can build these skills where you are observing things around you. And here at Byju's, rather than just teaching you what is what and just telling you to, remember all of these things, you will be able to see it for yourself. Yes? So what can you see in the manuscript? You can tell me in the live chat, right? What are you able to see in the manuscript, which is very different from what is there in an inscription? Just have a look at the image for 1 minute properly. You will be able to get this answer. I tell you, very, very simple and easy. Okay, some of you are telling me, ma'am, it is written on a soft surface. It is written on paper. Okay, very good. Handwriting is there. Alright, Manaswini has also given me an answer. But most of you have observed very good. It's written on palm leaves. Alright. But what about inscriptions? Very good, Gungun. Very good. Yes. Inscriptions are like drawings. It's on a hard surface. We find it on walls, right? So you've observed all of these things. So pretty much if you have to understand the difference between a manuscript and an inscription, everything is here. So what is manuscript? Manu in Latin. Okay, if I take Manu, don't read it as Manu. Okay, not Manu, Manu, right? Manu in Latin actually means hand, right? So if you think about it, manuscripts that are there, they are handwritten documents. So whatever I'm writing, that is a manuscript, right? Very good, very good. While inscriptions are carved on a hard surface. So if I take a rock, right? So you imagine this is a rock that I have. I take it, I take my, maybe a tool, and then I have a hammer and I hit it down hardly and I inscribe it, or I, make patterns on it. That is an inscription, right? They are carved, exactly. Now, normally we see that manuscripts are written on palm leaves, right? And in this case, inscriptions are done on hard surfaces like stones or metals. While on the other hand, manuscripts are very easy. You have to write on palm leaves only, so they were relatively easier to make. But if I have to sit, use tools and then do all of this, it will take me a lot of time to do inscriptions, right? So inscriptions were very difficult to do. And at the same time, manuscripts had a short lifespan because they were done on palm leaves and on these barks of birches and everything, no? So insects and all would come and damage it due to, sometimes maybe there might be multiple reasons as to why that will get damaged. So they could have easily, the manuscripts can get easily damaged until they are preserved properly. But if you look at inscriptions, they were more durable. That means it's okay, they were able to survive all of this. Which is why if you see, there were these inscriptions, especially if you had seen Ankita ma'am's class on when she went to visit Egypt, in and around the tombs of some of the rulers, you would find inscriptions on the walls, right? You find inscriptions on the walls in and around the tombs and closer to the tombs as well. Yes? So of course we see that this is primarily the main difference that we observe between a manuscript and an inscription. So how did they carve metals? Very good question. So they had these tools, okay? They would use like a hammer of sorts and these tools. And when you think about metals, it's not a metal sheet, right? So you see that these metals could either be like a big block, right? They would have a big block out of which they would carve it. So whatever was there, they would carve it out and then they would, sort of observe it. So going back to this, they are actually carving all of this out, right? So that's how they carved the metals. They had tools that would help them carve these metals. But, okay, you have manuscript and you have this inscription. I want you to tell me, are you able to understand what is written here? Or are you able to understand what is written over there in the manuscript? Are you all able to understand what is there? Yes or no? Ma'am, I am able to read the manuscript that you put on screen. Yes or no? No. And can you tell me why you are not able to read this? Why is it that, okay, manuscripts and inscriptions exist as a source of information from the past? But the reason is we are not able to read it. Why are we not able to read it? Can you tell me? Why is it that we are not able to understand what is written? If you ask me also, I will not be able to read it, right? So why is it that I am not able to read it? We don't know the language. Okay, exactly. We don't have the expertise. Can I say that? Ma'am, I am not an expert. I have understood what you wrote here. Because I have an expertise in English, I have studied about it and I know what it is. But I don't have the expertise. Then, who is going to help us understand what is written in a manuscript, right? Or who is going to tell us about, who's going to be telling us about what is there in the inscription? There are people who have this expertise, right? So there are people. And who are these people who have the expertise? Can you all tell me? Can you take a guess? Very good. Sakshi has told me archaeologists. Exactly. But are archaeologists the only ones who have the expertise? Absolutely not, because we also have historians as well, right? So we have historians and we have archaeologists as well, yes? So now, of course, there is a difference between the two. And most often than not, we get confused of who's a historian and who's an archaeologist. Now, historian who is there is somebody who studies and who writes about the past. So today, if you are able to know what happened during the Mughal Empire, if today you are able to know what happened, during the Chola dynasty or the Gupta dynasty or what happened during Ashoka's rule, it's also because it is written somewhere by certain historians, right? So they were able, so either they were physically present or they were able to interpret all of these sources and they were able to write, yes? So they do a lot of research. So that is something you need to understand. They do a lot of research regarding everything that has occurred from the beginning of time. But back in those days, see, in some cases, for example, if I talk about, the Mughal Empire and I talk about Akbar, there have been, books which were written around that time from which they could interpret what happened. But the thing is, what about before that? Before they had all these manuscripts and inscriptions and everything. How is it that they were able to understand this? Well, they would rely on evidence like fossils, weapons, and many more, right? And there were various items that acted as a record of the people. Now, Hani has asked me a very good question. Ma'am, how did they learn the language? Now, see, let me tell you one thing. See, in the case of empires, right? So there are people who are well versed. Either back in those days, the languages spoken was Sanskrit, or the languages that were spoken were probably, in the Mughal Empire time, it would probably be in Urdu or various other, languages were spoken. So there are people who have their expertise from which you can interpret and you are able to understand. But in terms of inscriptions, right, you can only have an inference that this is probably what they meant, right? So there are ways of interpreting the shapes, ways in which you interpret, the sequence, because normally these inscriptions would depict a story. So you try to understand what language they spoke about, right? So they talk about all of these things, they interpret it. This is probably the interpretation that is there. Yes, the shapes and symbols, they would interpret it to be a certain way, and then they would translate it. Even now there are some inscriptions for which there's a lot of research that is going on as well. So now, of course, I told you that your historians do a lot of research, but there are a lot of objects like your fossils, your pots and everything which need to be dug up, and then you should study and observe. Who will look after all of these objects? Who studies all of these objects? Well, that is done by the archaeologists. So archaeologists are people who actually study the evidence that was left behind way back then. So they are the ones who will excavate. So what they will do, normally if you have seen these movies, especially, I would not be able to take any names, but if you talk about movies which dig up the past, you will see 1, 2, 3 people, especially movies which talk about excavating mummies and everything from Egypt. You see how they will have, they wear these beige, they wear this, cream color top, green pants, they'll be digging something, and then they'll have one brush, and then they'll be, moving their brush and slowly taking care of it, right? So that is something that they do. So these are the archaeologists who are there, who normally study, they are found they will be doing their research in and around these settlement sites. That means in and around rivers, in and around where old cities were there. They will all be there, right? And of course, we see that all this knowledge that is there, the archaeologists, they will try to, understand from those fossils what could have possibly happened. They do a lot of research, lot of investigation, exactly, Gungun, and they will study, right? Ma'am, would archaeologists travel really far just to study? Exactly. They would go all the way to just learn about what happened. And then the historians would write about the history. So it's not like only historians will help us or only archaeologists will help us. Both of them work hand in hand to understand and tell us what happened way back in those days. So it's a combined team effort, right? And another thing is that it's not that just them excavating, writing stories we get to know. Here there's another very important factor. When exactly did it happen, right? Even though there are so many sources which tell a historian and an archaeologist that this would have happened, this would have happened, this would have happened, or maybe this what happened here, this probably, maybe this was the kind of pots they used, this is probably their mode of way in which they collected water. Even if they have all this information, they need to place it in sequence, right? So understand this. They need to place it in sequence. Now I'll give you a simple example. Imagine I am talking to you about how I went on a trip to Kerala, okay? I am going to tell all of you about my trip that I went to Kerala, yes? Now if I tell you, there was a very big wasp in my room. But I had to attend a wedding. I took a train to, Kerala. I visited my grandmother's house. I danced at my friend's wedding. Now I told you 5 sentences. Now how do you know? This is all about my trip to Kerala. But how do all of you know what happened first? Yes? How do all of you here know what would have happened first, what would have happened second, what would have happened third? Are you confused? Probably you tell me, okay ma'am, you went in the train, you visited or you went to Kerala in train. But what did I do after that? Do you all know? Did I go for my friend's wedding? Did I see a wasp in the train? Did I, dance at my friend's wedding first? Or did I go visit my grandmother? What did I do first? Yes or no? You will be confused, right? You will be like, ma'am, I don't know what you did. I am very confused. But at the same time, if I tell you that on 18th of April, I took a train to Kerala. I went on 19th and I visited my grandmother. On the 21st of April, I went to my friend's wedding. There on 22nd, I saw a very big wasp in my room. And on the 23rd, I danced at her wedding. So if I tell you, right, if I tell you and I give you the dates, yes, will you be able to remember easily? You will all be able to remember. No, with the dates you will be able to understand, okay, this happened first, this happened second, this happened third, and this was the last thing that happened. So as much as we despise dates, ma'am, so many dates to remember, why should I learn what happened 800 BCs ago, 258 BC ago, or what happened in 1958 or 1947? Why do I care? I mean, why should I remember the date? It is again to understand the sequence, right? It is to understand the sequence or the chronology. So the sequence of events that led me to what I had to do is what we call as chronology, and the dates are very, very important, right? So dates are super important, which is why a timeline of events is necessary. So we have the cosmic timelines that help us to track. What is this cosmic timeline? Please don't worry. You have BCE and you have BC and AD, which is before Christ and after Christ, right? So nowadays we say BCE and we say BCE and CE instead of BC and AD. But this is just to give us a timeline of roughly as to how back in those days, right? Like how earlier in the past it happened or how later in the past it happened, right? So last but not the least is just about why dates are important. That is all. Yes? Okay. All right. So now of course we know that we say before Christ, but BCE is before Common Era, and then you say Common Era. Though these were the earlier terms used, right? So here before Christ and Anno Domini, but later on it is BCE, which is before Common Era and Common Era. So this is what we use right now. My bad, I was not clear with it. Yes? Okay. So far everybody, are we all clear? Jackson says, ma'am, not clear. Yes? Okay, so can you all tell me which part of it is not clear? I will just load the chat in my phone in the meanwhile. Which part is not clear to all of my students? Yes? Difference between historians and archaeologists. Okay. See, archaeologists, who are there, right? So archaeologists are people who study objects. So what are these objects? Like fossils. So they go to certain areas, or they go to these earliest civilizations, they go to these locations, they dig up, they excavate, and they investigate, right? So they investigate all of these fossils and other objects. Now the historians who are here, what do? They study and they read all of these manuscripts, right? And all of these writings, autobiographies that are there. They write about or they read about all of these things to understand what would have happened in the past, and then they write about it. So this is what they do. Now the main understanding you need to have is that if we need to really study about our past, only the archaeologists and what they do is not enough. Only what the historians do is not enough, which is why they together help us study and understand our past, right? So that is what we need to know. Why BCC? BC, again, like I said, no, BC was an earlier terminology which they used as before Christ and everything. That's not something we use right now, but we use, right? So what we use right now is before Common Era and Common Era. And of course, this makes our life easier, no? Because we have to go to a more neutral way of understanding timelines, which is why we use the term BCE and CE. So if you think about it, around this range, 1500, 500, we use the term BCE, and this particular terminology which goes forward in time, that is what we use as CE, right? Okay. Yes. Any more doubts? In the meanwhile, I have a poll question for all of you. Yes? Yes, we use BCE and CE. Yes, that's what we use right now. Now, quick question for everybody. On which of the following were manuscripts written on? On palm leaf, people leaf, banana leaf, or on the branch of birch trees? Pramila, it is Bharat. Bharat, okay? Yes. On which of the following is it written? Option A is 1 and 2, option B is 3 and 4, option C is 1 and 4, and option D is 1 and 3. Yes, very good, all of you, very good. So it is palm leaf and bark of birch trees. Exactly. So now I have another question for all of you. This is going to be your homework question. Even though I have the answer slide next, I still want you to write this down. So this is your homework question, everybody. Homework question for all of you is, you have a match the following, from which you need to tell me, you need to match history, inscription, historian, archaeologist and manuscript, and then you need to tell me which is the correct option here. Yes? So with this, if you see, you have to tell me the correct option in the comments of this video. Yes? And if you liked today's class, okay, if you liked today's class, if you enjoyed what we did, then let me know in the comments of this particular video. Yes? Okay. So you have to let me know in the comments as well. I am going to quickly rush through to the next slides. I hope all of you have taken a screenshot. So take a screenshot of this particular slide on your phones or in your laptops so that you can solve this question peacefully, and then you can let me know in the comments of this video. And students in the live chat, did you all enjoy today's class? You can tell me a yes or a no right away to let me know that this class was helpful, right? Okay, so with this, of course, we come to the end, and as we all know, right, today we learned about what our past tells us about the lives, clothing, eating habits, why studying about our past was important to understand how the lifestyle changed, how societies changed, yes, when the earliest civilizations began and what they were like, and we can move on to talking about where and where all can we learn about our past, from manuscripts and inscriptions, yes, who helped us study about our past, and how these days can be helpful in studying about our past. Yes? So of course, as you all know, we come to the end of today's class. Daily Bangtan vibes, if you have whatever you did not understand, bacha, let me know in the comments of this video as well. I will help you out, right? So if there is an issue, I'm always here to help out, but always maintain the decorum, the positivity and the love that I keep in my class at all times. And Byju's 6 to 8 is a place where we constantly believe that we are growing, we are not mentoring students on YouTube alone. We are mentoring like our own children. You are like my own children to me, which means I take your studies very seriously. I take your education seriously. I take your grooming. Tomorrow I want you to become wonderful adults. Tomorrow I want you to become responsible children. I want you to become responsible adults. I want you to become kind adults. So today I will always be not just teaching you things that are necessary for exams. I will be teaching you, mentoring you things that are needed for life. So if you believe in if you believe that I am somebody who's going to help you with all of these things, if you trust me, then you hit the subscribe button. And let me tell you, it's not just me, it's all of us teachers who look at you as our own children. So you have to hit the subscribe button on the channel, because you know that Byju's 6 to 8 has got you covered. And of course, we make sure to like this video, make sure to share this video with all of your friends, and do not forget to subscribe. So thank you so much, students, for staying with me throughout. Any more doubts that are there, let me know in the comments. And Bangtan vibes, if you have an issue, you can always reach out to me. Otherwise, it's okay, right? You can learn in other ways also. Okay, all right, everybody. If there are any more doubts, let me know in the comments of this video. I will definitely help you out. You have nothing to worry about. But now I will be signing off. Up until the next time, take care, lots of love, and bye-bye.